How's it going, y'all? So this will be a short episode. I'm going to kick off a series where I will be building a economic health manager. So there's a couple components here. Let me just show my spreadsheet on the screen. This is going to be the most helpful thing. Basically, I haven't found a budgeting tool that does what I want, so I made my own spreadsheet budget, right? I'm a spreadsheet budgeter. There's a lot of people in this situation. I'm not sure that I'm interested in making another budget tool, but there's a lot of other tabs on here you can see. The one I'm most presently concerned with is called the savings plan. And this tab in particular is essentially an investment comparator. So each line item here is a potential investment. I could fix my car. I could install, install basement kitchen. Why is installing a basement kitchen an investment? Because then I could sublease the basement. So there's like a potential return there. Same with fixing the car. There's a potential return because I could fix it and sell it for more than I could just sell it for, because the fact that it's broken like scares a bunch of people off. And then I could like pay on credit cards and student loans and the house and stuff like that. So and those are like kind of debts, but then also there's like invest in an index fund, invest in crypto, etc. And this is one of many dimensions that I feel that other tools on the market are missing. So they're missing the fact that paying off debt and making an investment are one-to-one substitutes. In economics, we call them both saving. So if you think about the GDP calculation, private consumption, there's the expenditure approach and the savings approach. Let's look at the images. I think this will be more helpful. Yeah, I is for savings. Well, I is for investment. But if your money is sitting in your checking account, I was taught I is for savings, and I had to really drill that I is not for investment. Because if it's like sitting in your checking account, it's counted. And that's not an investment. Private consumption plus gross private investment. Yeah, I could be mixing something up. Or it could just be that the I is savings and investment, which is kind of the point that I was making. These are savings and investments. On the monthly budget side, there are some tools that have historically done a poor job, although they're doing a better job. One would be Truebill. So Truebill historically was like not able to find my subscriptions, but recently it's been doing a great job. And as those tools improve, my motivation to make my own custom budget goes down, right? So at a first glance, I want to convert all of these spreadsheet tabs into a tool. I'm calling that like an economic health tool because it does more than money things. It also does things like time management. So a holistic view of economics sees that you have to trade time for money. But there's other things you could be doing with your time other than earning or like financial outputs. You could be doing things like going to the gym and getting healthier or taking relaxation time. So ultimately, I'd like to have a sort of unique economic health tool that can do budgets and action items for all of these things. Very different from what's on the market today. So that's to give one part of the motivation. Another part of the motivation for this tool is that student loan payments are coming back online. So there is a student loan pause through the end of August. But I'll have to be making payments soon, so I have to budget for that, right? So that's another reason that budgeting is top of mind right now. And a final motivation for making this app, I guess there's two more. One is like a final, I would call important motivation, and then there's like a secondary lesser motivation. Okay. The final important motivation is that Blitz Alpha 2 just came out. So this is like a super awesome tool. I'm a big fan of Blitz. They're going through a framework change, a very large impact change. It could be way awesome, it could be way terrible. So I've been waiting for this and I want to try it out. So that's the third motivation for kicking off a new like project. And then the fourth one, which is related to that, is basically like the fact that a new framework came out is not a good reason to make a project. It is from like a learning perspective, but not if we're going to make like a serious product. And I want to leave the door open that this might become a serious product. If I was making a serious product, what I would do is I would say what solutions already exist, in particular what open source solutions already exist. Can I repurpose or improve those instead of starting from scratch? So if someone is serious about a product development, then just picking a shiny new framework is like a terrible idea. So I did look through open source budgets. I'll close these. The TLDR is that there are basically two cool ones. One is called Actual Budget. This used to be proprietary, then the developer like found out it was too much work, so he open sourced it. Here is like a blog article talking about that. In the process of talking about this blog article, he mentioned fly.io, which I will also mention. And here's the GitHub, by the way, actual budget / actual. And in his contributing guidelines, he like talks about like some things he would like to do. One is like migrating to TypeScript, and another is a compiler upgrade, SWC. So these things are actually built into Blitz anyway. So this is like supplementary reasons to use Blitz. So Actual Budget is like one of the most tech-forward open source budgets, arguably the most tech-forward open source budget at the moment. And it's saying it would like to make improvements that are available in Blitz already. So that's like reinforcing the idea that Blitz is awesome, not just like a random shiny thing. Let's look quickly at fly.io. This looks comparable to like Vercel or Netlify. It's a platform that you can deploy your projects on. And they have some free allowances. So this is just like another place that you might consider deploying. I had not heard of it, so I want to give them a shout out. They have seems like a pretty sturdy free tier. I will not be using them currently. Maybe sometime in the future I will. What is their use case? They seem to have a distinct use case where you have a Docker file, basically. They say if you can build it, if you can build it into a Docker file, we can run it. So that seems to be their like interesting differentiator. They have this thing called Phoenix files. Cool. And so certainly like maybe for these libraries, it makes a lot of sense. And what do we notice about these? They're kind of like Remix is like server-side rendered at runtime, right? So you kind of need the whole stack running. Rails, you kind of need the whole stack running. I think that's kind of the theme here. I'm not sure that I need my whole stack running, so I'm not sure that I need this. And even if I did need it, I'm not sure that I couldn't use something else. So there's a great compare-contrast from Fauna. Really want to shout this out. So it's like, man, do I even like this fly.io thing? It's a different use case. Do I really need it? So check out this URL, comparison function as a service, FAAS, FOSS providers. And it goes through a bunch of these OpenFOSS, AWS Lambda, Vercel functions, Cloudflare workers, and then also all of these similar platforms. Is there a better term for them? I'm calling them like platforms, like application platforms. It's places where you might go to deploy your application. And some of these are serverless, like there's like this serverless theme, but you don't need serverless. If it can run a whole Docker container, it doesn't have to be serverless. So there's like you can think of like a square, like is it serverless or not serverless? Is it a Docker file or not Docker file? And you can do both basically. Like there's something like Fargate, which is function as a service with a Docker file. So they have Lambda here, but really they should be mentioning Fargate as well. So Lambda is truly a function. It's not a Docker file. So this would be like the, yes, it's serverless, no, it's not a Docker file. And then Fargate would be like, yes, it's serverless, yes, it is a Docker file. And there are offerings in all 4 of these quadrants that I'm calling like all the quadrants, like application platforms. Pickles or no pickles on burgers? Let's go pickles, man. Let's go pickles. And so fly.io, fly.io makes the list. It's like one of these like cool, interesting offerings. But like what they wrote here is really goofy. I guess there's no size, there's no limit on the execution time or the payload time, which is like really interesting and unique. If you need to do like something that's going to take a long time, like a machine learning job, or some sort of like, I guess the use case for actual budget would be like financial processing. It seems like really attractive for that, but these NAs don't make sense. You need to read the footnote. The footnote is basically like they have a global container runtime that's customizable, and like the real answers to all of these depend on how you customize it. So I don't know, I haven't used it. Definitely want to give them a shout out though. Who knows? Like maybe that's the direction things are going. Maybe it's newer than Cloudflare Workers. I don't even know how old it is, but it seems like it's pretty new and cool. Okay, so we gave a shout out to Actual Budget, Fly.io, and the compare contrast. Yeah, this is more compare contrast. It was less useful. The other one I showed was the most useful thing. Student refinance calculators. Just while we're talking about this, I want to mention today I learned you can do a 30-year debt consolidation through the Department of Education for some kinds of student loans, which is a really, really interesting option. Okay, so actual budget, and then the other contender is Firefly 3. So this is the other cool open source budget, basically. And then there's just like droves and droves of garbage ones. But these are the 2 cool ones. And I even tweeted the creator of Actual Budget because he talked a bit about how hard it was to make a budgeting thing. And I said, hey, I want to make a budget. Should I do it from scratch, or should I like contribute to one of these 2 projects? At first, you might think the obvious answer is, well, dude, like contribute to Actual Budget. Except that he complains about his own implementation in a way that sort of like makes me think it's a bad idea. So previously I told you he wants to do things that Blitz already does, so why not just start with Blitz? The answer to why not would be because there's so much domain knowledge in terms of like models that are already built and stuff. So we have this trade-off between like domain knowledge and product-specific like business rules that are pre-encoded for free versus framework quality. And it's what you would really like is to have both. It's really not obvious if you have to pick one. It's really not obvious which way to go. Let's see if I can find the snippet where he says like this was a problem. Like I completely underestimated how much work it was. He says, yeah. Actual is very different. It's not a normal SaaS. It's local first using a fancy technology called CRDTs. So this is a conflict-free replication data type. This is like basically it's really complicated, and it could be so complicated that it's not worth doing. So he says. This has a lot of benefits, but one drawback is that you can't use off-the-shelf solutions. Finding help is harder. Doing something so different makes it difficult to iterate quickly. He can't make a simple a simple database schema change. Every feature needs to be rolled out very thoughtfully and maintains backwards compatibility. So this intimidates me from wanting to contribute to the actual code base if the actual code base has a hard opinion that we have to use CRDTs, right? So maybe I want to start from scratch and not and not use the CRDTs. And maybe I can like glean model benefits from these people anyway. These people being Actual Budget and also Firefly. Here we see Firefly brags about their awesome JSON REST API. Actually, it's super cool. It's really great, and they have some well-defined models. And this would be an example of a reason that I would want to adopt a pre-existing framework. So I don't have to like construct the database. The database, it's already there. The architecture is already there. And then in theory, I could just like take their server and like rewrite the front end, maybe, except two caveats. One, in the case of Actual, he's suggesting the server be refactored. So it's like, if I'm gonna take this thing and then only keep the server, but then the server needs to be refactored, maybe I should just be doing this from scratch, right? And then the other side of it is that I would like to use Blitz, and Blitz is a full stack framework. So there is not a strong separation in Blitz. There's not a strong separation between the backend and the server code. You can do it, but it's like you're imposing additional layer of work. You can do it, but it's not built for that. What might still be valid is if I don't take their server or their front end, if I just take their schema, and I think that's still on the table. But then comes this last caveat, which is these are really budgeting tools. And arguably, even though in my spreadsheet I was looking around for budgeting tools and thinking, well, I use the budget to create, to like get all these cash flow implications. And then the next step is I look at the savings plan where some of those budget items come over here. And then I face a trade-off where I can pay some stock amount, some fixed amount to gain a cash flow. Like it's basically looking at this as paying to improve my cash flow, or paying to edit the line item values on this spreadsheet. So that's how I was approaching it initially, but on second glance, first of all, a bunch of things go here that would never go on the budget. Install basement does not exist on my budget. If I did install the basement and if I took out a loan, the loan could go on the budget, but that's not a current budget. That's a hypothetical budget, which is a whole entity that I don't know that these other projects even support. Maybe my app should support it, a hypothetical budget. Or maybe I just don't need it at all because these are really two separate concerns and two separate layers, and we can create two separate apps. So for the initial scope of this app, I'm not actually building a budget. We've talked about the background and the motivation, and that's led us to where we are. But where I am is realizing that there are some sturdy budget tools out there, and maybe I just want to specialize in the in this savings plan section, at least at first. And there's some really good reasons for that. I have some basically investment comparison algorithms that like nobody's doing, and they're really great. So if you can see on the screen, this thing says janky parity and janky debt, and then there's a comment about super jank. So this is like basically a proprietary algorithm. I think I'm going to keep it proprietary. I might try to patent it. So that doesn't help, people who want an open source option. What the open source thing could do is have a plugin system, and then I could have a proprietary plugin. And that's basically the idea of, so Daniel Kahneman is like this awesome guy. I'm not going to get into who he is, but he's an awesome guy. So I have the idea to make something called Kahneman and something called Danny, where Kahneman is open source and Danny is not. So Danny would be like the closed source app. You get it on your cell phone, kind of like Dave. Just in terms of branding, it's got that name. Not that it does anything similar to Dave. It's just like, this is kind of like branding. You make it personable. And then Kahneman is like the sophisticated open backend. And so basically all of what I want to do is going to be open source, but there will be a plugin system and I can keep my secret sauce within the plugin, as well as, do the makeup on the front end that other people wouldn't really need, like the branding stuff. Other people, even if you're an open source person, it's not like you want my brand, right? So that's how my thoughts are progressing. The other thing I'm going to do is call out, we've talked about the open source budgeting options, and we talked about basically, and so what about the front end here? Like, let's go to the demo. They have a cool online demo. It looks okay. It's not like I have a real problem with this. It looks a little bit dated, but it works. Now that I sign in, it's got some cool stuff in here, right? It's got like a chart. But what I notice is it's got like euros, and it's got, if you read through the content, like I think English is not this person's first language. There's some things that I would like to improve in the UI, but none of them are really deal breakers. Like, look at all the stuff you get for free. But when I start to dive into these elements, I start to really question if they're what I want. So budgets is like, let's say, I would say a good feature, not an essential though. Bills, I don't even understand why this is different really. Piggy Banks, now I start to have a red flag because this basically seems to be I don't want to say this in a disparaging way. Let's just say a different spin on the savings plan here. And it's a different spin on the savings plan that creates major blockers for the way I want to do things. So that's why that's a red flag. We go over to transactions. It's great that Firefly and also Actual Budget do all of this transaction work. For me, if I'm focusing on the investment part, I actually don't need this, right? All of a sudden, I don't need it. So part of me still wants this, but another part of me is like, I've dealt with, in my day job and other places. Also, this is not the first budget app that I'm trying to make. I've dealt with transactions, and it's so difficult. It's so much work. I'll have to go get a third-party API like Plaid, and I'll have to do like so much work. So for now, this is like a series. We'll see how it evolves. But for now, what I'd like to do is avoid all of that scope and just focus on the investment ranking. And therefore, I don't need this. Now, what I should like to do is maintain a high value for interoperability. So Firefly has this ability to export data. And also Actual Budget, because it's open source, has the ability to export and import data. And then also your bank. We talk about like using Plaid like an API, and it would probably be smart for me to maintain, interoperability with Plaid. That would be great one day, although it's a bunch more work. But these are things that I think can all be added, right? If I'm focusing on the investment tab, think about this spreadsheet. I'm focusing on this investment tab, the savings plan tab. I can literally either integrate to another budgeting tool if they'll let me, and if they won't let me, I can build my own budgeting tool that's really a separate product. And I can do that later, and I don't need to do that now, and that's not really where my value add is. Because if you look at the way I do my budget, really, I got like a few things that are interesting to mind, but this is really pretty vanilla. It's just cash flow based accounting. A few things that are different, like some people will make you allocate this monthly cash flow. For me, what I do with that money is I say, okay, now let's go to the savings plan and figure out where to use it. That kind of ends up becoming zero-based accounting, except the other app is going to introduce another line item for the savings plan, where I'm going to say, hey, this is a surplus accounting. Let's take that surplus and do something with it. But you can, depending on how you implement it, you can make them both zero-based. That's totally fine. I think zero-based accounting is great. I also am week-centric. I'm very focused on the week. And this is something that Truebill and I think Pocketsmith are both doing better these days, and they're getting better every day, is the sort of calendar integration idea, where it's not just like, here's your monthly budget or your monthly bills. It's like, I'm going to give you the note, like, this is the one you need to pay this week, and this is how much cash you need to have on hand this week. That's a big deal for me because, like, I have to pay my bills, right? Yes, there is a repo. I'll get to that in 1 second. So there's some peculiarities. This results in, like, you can see I have a gas budget for week 1 and a separate line item for week 2. So these are some things that are slightly peculiar of mine, but they're like not a super big deal, right? This is like a pretty minor feature if you think about it, is taking your gas line item budget and then having it like spread over 4 weeks. Like, that's pretty trivial to implement. Okay, and then I don't know, like, I note if mine's auto paid or not. I have a notes section. I don't actually remember if like you're gonna need a budget, like, has like a flag for this, but it's pretty trivial. You see what I mean? So really, I'm not getting a big value add in the budget section. It's how I decide what to do with my surplus. That is the really unique thing for me. Okay. Since I've shouted them out, so that's why I'm not going to do this right now. I do want to maintain interoperability. Let me make a note of that. Close this, keep this one. Okay, where's mine? Did I close my tab? These were the other budget things I looked at. Ah, okay, so here's mine. HGSSRUON. I don't know how to pronounce that. Here's the repository. It's called Kahneman under Vanderveer. So we're still getting things kicked off, and I'm still basically giving the background. I haven't even had time to initialize the app. So I was trying to keep it to 30 minutes. We're basically at 30 minutes. So this might just be like a lecture. I might not, I'm gonna try to get to initialize. We'll see. I'll get to the point where I try and initialize, but if it takes more than 10 or 15 minutes, then I will postpone that. Goal, maintain, with bank data download, like, actual budget export, Firefly export. These are the ones that I really care about, right? And then I'll say possibly you're gonna need a budget. You're gonna need a budget. I think that's what it is. You need a budget. Why nab? There's no gun in there. Sorry, my bad. You need a budget. Possibly YNAB, Pocketsmith, whatever. Another thing I want to possibly do is hypothetical So I have these two apps, and I'm still trying to separate in my head which scope goes where. So this feature might go into the Danny repository when I make that. Will this video be on YouTube or something? Yes, so I'm currently streaming to YouTube as well. I'm also on Twitter and Twitch and I don't know, some other places, I think LinkedIn. So search my name, John Vanderveer, just like my TikTok handle. Search that on YouTube, and you should be able to find my channel, and you'll be able to see the whole screen if you do that. So TikTok, you can only see like a restricted part of the screen, right? Which reminds me, I need to get a wide angle lens adapter. I need to get a wide, so that y'all can see on TikTok, y'all can see more of the screen. Okay, we've gone through the background. Hey, why are you like trying to make a budget app? Because none of the budgets do the thing I want. And then really like it's not so much the budgeting, even though it kind of is, but there's like a lot of work and little benefit. So I don't really want to code this right now. What's really unique is my savings plan. Cool, so we went through all of that. I want to give a shout out to some of the budget tools that I do use. So I do use Truebill currently. I used it back in the day, I stopped using it, didn't use it for a long time, and now I've gone back to it. I don't use Truebill budgets, and that's not to say that they are bad. They used to be bad. Maybe they're good now. I haven't, there's like a large upfront investment of time to get a budget working in my experience. And this works for me, so I just haven't had the motivation to put the time into Truebill budgets to make it work. Maybe now it's like seamless and great, and maybe now it doesn't take a bunch of time. Maybe I just have a stigma associated to that. What I will say is that I still use Truebill because currently it helps me keep an eye on my subscriptions. So I've saved like at least $100, maybe a couple $100 per month by going through those over the past month and like cleaning up ones that I don't need. And that's not gonna save you stuff all the time. It's one of those things that you should periodically check. Even Truebill themselves is like, this is like a quarterly exercise they recommend. Just go through your subscriptions. And I think that's right sized. I think that's about the right cadence. Okay, so I do use Truebill. They are, you can't use them online. If you sign in online, they will tell you to go to your iPhone. Or I think it's on Android. I'm not 100% sure. I use the iPhone app. It's really great. It's a really great iPhone app. I do wish that they had a web platform. Now, off and on, I've also used Pocketsmith. I would still call myself a pretty big fan of Pocketsmith. And if I were to pick an automated budget, is automated the right word? I guess automated is the right word. It would be this. What I really use Pocketsmith for is keeping an eye on my like my total wealth, my net wealth. Is that what it's called? Net wealth? Net worth. Net worth. So I used Personal Capital for a while. Personal Capital kept having issues with like, this is ironic, okay? Because Personal Capital got acquired by the people they kept having issues with. Empower. So my wife has an Empower 401k, and Personal Capital kept having API connection issues with Empower, which is like, and then Empower acquired them. And so, Godspeed, I hope it works out. Maybe they had to acquire them because that was the only way that they could get the integration to work. Because there's like some proprietary secret sauce that they couldn't do, or Empower couldn't figure it out, and Personal Capital, and they were like, well, if you're so smart, your engineers can just do it. And they were like, we're not going to do it for free. And then they bought them. I don't know. This is all speculation. So I hope this works for you. I found Personal Capital to be a decent free solution, except that it annoyed me that it just didn't work for sometimes weeks at a time. And my numbers it'd be basically useless because my numbers were like so lagged that thinking again to this weekly budget, I have bills I need to pay. I can't be weeks out of date on my budget. If all I'm using you for is a net worth calculator, then maybe it's still annoying to be weeks out of date. Sorry. That was the main reason that I went away from Personal Capital to Pocketsmith. So things change over time. Maybe they're better now, but that was the reason that I went to Pocketsmith. Pocketsmith was working very well for a while, and then they went through a major refactoring where they encouraged people to basically change the way the data is connected. So it went through like an interruption period where it was also not working for me. It's been a while since I looked into this, so I can't give you the technical details of the change that they made. Maybe it's on their blog. But I remember they gave like a bunch of reasons about why they were making this change, and I basically agreed from a technical perspective it was like a good move. Like, this is smart. They were changing the way their API integrations work, and I forget exactly what they were doing. And then I also like the way Pocketsmith looks. It's really intuitive to me. And I basically had a great time with it, except for the fact that it got interrupted, so I stopped using it. So I'm not currently using it, but I might resume using it. And if I had to pick one to recommend, it would probably be Pocketsmith. Okay. So I wanted to shout out Pocketsmith and Truebill as, like, we talked about the open source tools, but then there's these closed source tools. You're going to need a budget. I used this for a while. It was just too much work for me. I had to stop using it. It wasn't just too much work. It was too much work and not enough benefit. Basically, when I do my spreadsheet like this, I feel like I have to exert about the same amount of work as when I do YNAB. So YNAB feels like sort of lower level. And it's not that I have a problem with that. Clearly, I do that because I do that. But I get more benefit out of my spreadsheet. Why? This is just going off the top of my head, so I might be missing some things. A few things that I can think of. One is that the way I do this factor ledger thing, basically the way I pull my numbers. Nope, I can't remember. Sorry. I don't want to say YNAB is doing things it was or wasn't doing. I can't remember if YNAB made me look at the numbers myself or if it tried to calculate them for me. So I'll say in general, solutions where they calculate the number for me, basically sometimes I think they like pull a wrong number. And that's one of the reasons that I do this low-level stuff. I think with YNAB, if I recall correctly, it made me look at the number myself. And then I just was going like, okay, like this is a good practice, but why am I paying for YNAB? I could just use the spreadsheet. I think that was the motivation for not using YNAB anymore. Monarch Money, I don't know, never tried it. It seems kind of newish. Maybe it's cool. Okay, so this is like all the background. And now I think I'm literally going to I really don't want to. Sorry, y'all. I don't want to install the alpha because you see this was updated 2 days ago, and it might be a week before. Is the spreadsheet public? It's not. And I'm sharing my screen, so I obviously have no problem like showing you these numbers. But what I would rather do, let's see, I might have something similar that's public. What I'd rather do is make you an app. That's going to be a lot more useful, I think. But maybe I should just open source the spreadsheet too. So here's my old budget tool. It's completely out of date. Please don't use it. I guess I'll reference it. In the docs, did I check in a spreadsheet here? budgeting and financial planning, XLSX. Download. Yeah, so here's like an old version of the spreadsheet, and it's largely savings, events, incentives. Let's see. Savings, yearly events, rewards, and achievement. Yeah, so I think the only real change is that I added a yearly budget plan tab in my Google spreadsheet that is not in this Excel. And the yearly budget thing is like, it's a vibe, right? Because you want to plan in advance for that guy's birthday, that guy's, you know, Christmas and whatever. So, or like a trip, you have a big trip. Because those, basically in my experience, those can be expensive and you need to save up for them. So T-Nice01, you can check out this spreadsheet, which is open. It's a little bit dated, but it's largely the same thing. And that's under my budget tool repository. So this repository is 3 years old. I'm not maintaining it. I plan, basically what I'm making now, I want it to supersede that. Let me make a note of that as well. But if you want something like the spreadsheet, that's going to be your best bet. I'd rather not share my my Google spreadsheet with the public. Like, even though I'm letting you see it, I don't want to open the link up. This is the old budget tool, and this is Condiment, yeah. I need to update the whole app. I haven't even really started the app. Firefly, we already did that. Actual, good. Blitz. Yeah, so I could try installing Blitz right now just to get it going and being like, hey, look, you know, we kicked it off. But they're updating it. There's 2 days ago. When was the release before that? Before that, it was 10 days ago, which means there's an 8-day difference, right? And it might very well be the case that I install this and then I don't work on the series for another 6, 7, 8 days. So they could have another release. So I'm like, hey, let's just wait, and I can initialize on top of the latest code at that time, which I think is going to be smarter. Okay, cool. So this has been an overview video, I guess, somewhat accidentally. Well, I intended to include the overview, but I wanted to get into a bit of coding, but I guess the overview was sort of meaty enough that I didn't actually get into any coding. Yeah, I will, wait, is this a budget app or an Econ health app? The goal is for it to be an economic health app. Okay, I guess you might have joined more recently. So when the video is saved on YouTube, maybe check it out, and you'll see that I do my budget in the spreadsheet, but I pretty specifically am avoiding, at least at the moment, putting this in an app. It's the savings plan tab that I'm prioritizing. And I haven't really gotten into how that relates to, I did a little bit, but I can talk a little bit more about how that has to do with economic health. So what's the difference between financial health and economic health? There are a bunch of differences, but basically economic is going to include all activities, any human activity. So economics is an approach to sociology. It's under sociology. And it's a quantitative approach to sociology where we largely do cost-benefit analyses by coercing values into dollar figures. And this ends up with a really great misimpression in the public eye that it's basically just glorified finance, which it's not. When we do things, when we talk about like qualities as a measure of like medical effectiveness, we're doing some really weird things, or like the economic value of a human life. So we coerce these things that don't have a dollar value, we coerce them into dollar figures. What we're not saying, when we establish an economic value of human life, what we're not saying is, you know what, I recommend you should be able to buy a human for this amount. Like, that's not what we're doing. We're trying to get an apples to apples comparison of very different things, and so we need a common unit. And for economic reasons of economic theory that I won't go into now, the currency is a really great unit of account that lets us do these apples to apples comparisons as best we can. So the truth is the value of a human life is priceless. Even still, when we do cost-benefit analyses of certain policy, we have to use tools like qualities in the economic value of a human life. When it comes to budgeting, how does this relate? Human life is like 10 to 20 mil in the Department of Transportation. That sounds about right. Hey, what's up, Eric? Thanks for being here. Long time, man. This app looks like a great idea. Thank you very much. I'll just give you one or two examples. Let's talk at Capricorn. Absolutely. Shout out. I'm pretty sure that's open information. Did Brian blog it? So Brian Kaplan has a blog that y'all should be aware of. He talked about the 2019 Capricorn, 2018 Capricorn. You heard it here first. There's going to be a 2022 Capricorn. Feel free to reach out to me if you would like an invitation. So this is a long-running thing, and it's been renewed. And let me also shout out his blog. So Brian Kaplan, very well-known economist and longtime blogger at Econ Lib, one of those. Here's his personal website. That's not his blog. Econ Lib. So he blogged at Econ Lib forever and ever, but now he has his own thing. Let me get the link for that. Oh, I can't click those. That's weird. Brian Kaplan blog. Oh, it's Bet On It. Yeah, Bet On It. betonit.substack. So I'm subscribed to this. Let me read it first. I guess you can read it first. Highly recommend you check this out. You can learn some real economics. Anyway, to the budget. When I do a budget session, I do budgets each week with my wife. And what I don't want to do is just chat about numbers and then not take any action. For a budget to be useful, practically speaking, I believe it should be actionable. So it should produce actionable insights. The most trivial actionable insight is one that we've already talked about, which is I have this surplus cash at the end of the month. That's the reason you do a budget, is to make sure that your income is higher than your expenses. And if you have a surplus, what do I do with that? So the first action item, I guess, is like make sure that you're in the black, as it were. You have some cash flow. The second action item is, where do I use it? So you prioritize these savings. Those would be pretty much financial moves. When I think about economic moves, I'm thinking about something like sleep more would be an action. Or sorry, dude, I just jacked something up. So sleep more. Go on vacation. Learn a skill. What would be another one? Go to gym more. Buy healthier stuff. Okay, so let's take a look at these. If I buy healthier stuff, are my finances going to improve? Maybe in the long term, because like I have like a healthier body, and so my lifetime earnings has maybe improved, or I just live longer, so I can, like, my whole life earnings goes up because I can live longer. Yes, those are things. That's not what I'm trying to capture here. What I'm trying to capture here is a financial input for a health benefit. I feel healthier. And yeah, I'm just like, the input is money and the output is health. You see how that's not a financial budgeting thing? That's an economic budgeting thing. So we're allocating money for non-financial purposes. go to gym more is basically the same thing, except that I'm not necessarily spending more. This is a use of time. Learn a skill, again, a use of time. Although there are return implications to that. So maybe I could generate a cash flow out of that. So that would be a case where I'm inputting $0 and I'm getting a cash flow, which if you're a finance guy, it feels like cheating. It's like something is missing. How can you input $0 and spontaneously generate cash flow? Well, because there's time. Time is involved. When you do a budget, send me the budget if you found a place that does this, that you budget your time. Again, I talked about some of the leading edge budget tools like Truebill and PocketSmith are just starting to get calendar mappings for these bills. What I'm talking about is like a decade step forward. It's like a decade step forward along that paradigm is literally my calendar is a dimension of my budget. So I'm not just budgeting dollars, I'm budgeting time, which is really an economic, it's like a deeply economic concern. And then sleep more. Maybe like if you're a finance geek, you find some way that this generates you a cash flow because you're more productive at work or, you know, whatever. I'm being more basic than that. I'm just saying, I just want to sleep. I just want to sleep. And I'm willing to even spend more money or like reduce my income or increase my expenses in exchange for better sleep, a non-pecuniary return. Go on vacation is another like pretty clear example of this. It's just dollars for utility. This is not something that you allocate towards because it improves your budget in the traditional financial model. This needs some sort of unique numeraire like life points. Exactly. I feel like actually Eric probably understands this better than I do. To calculate what you want this app to do. Yeah, so that's all correct. I'll punt on the numeraire or the unit of account. But there's going to be some sort of mathematical calculation where the user is going to say, I prefer, they're going to run their own, they're going to input their own calculations. How do you weigh health versus money? By default, 1-to-1, the user can sort of like toggle those. And I don't know if I need to put labels on them. Maybe I should. But anyway, that's the weight. That's the weight that is going to drive the optimization. And that's why I consider this like an economic health app and not just yet another budgeting tool. Okay, excellent question. Thanks everyone for being here. It's been over 50 minutes. We did not get into coding today. Next time, we will get into coding this bad boy. So tune in. It's probably going to be a week from today.